The process by which a Windows system gets its name propagated out on the network so everybody else knows its name has a long and convoluted history. However, we can make things a little bit simpler. Basically, starting with Windows Vista, there's even a little variance in there. A Windows system will do name resolution in a very specific order. First of all, if it's a member of a domain, it will immediately go to its domain controller, which is also going to be its DNS server, and everything's done through good old-fashioned DNS. Now, if you're not on a domain, like at your home, for example, you would traditionally use NetBIOS. So you'd be using ports 137, 138, 139 to handle your name resolution. However, starting around Vista, a new type of protocol came online. This protocol is known as LLMNR. It runs on UDP port 5355 normally, and it basically is a vastly improved name resolving service, much better than NetBIOS. So what's interesting now is that on today's system, if you're not in a domain, it really depends on your version of Windows. For example, if you're running Windows 10 Professional, you run both NetBIOS and LLMNR simultaneously, and whatever it can grab, it does the name resolution that way. In Windows Home, NetBIOS is completely gone. It just uses good old LLMNR, so the whole NetBIOS world disappears. Now, what makes all of this interesting is that we do run into problems with computer names in Windows networks. When these problems kick in, the fix can be wild. It could be anything from a firewall to you've turned off network discovery to you have a router between you and another computer. So there's all kinds of issues. But what we need is a tool that tells us the state of things right now. Simply clicking on your network and looking what computers are showing up and not showing up is a terrible way to understand what's going on your Windows network because, well, Windows lies to itself sometime. Luckily for us, we do have a great tool. This tool is called NBT Stat. It's been around for, well, since Windows networking started pretty much, and it is a wonderful, powerful tool. The only downside is that it's getting a little long in the tooth. NBT Stat doesn't play well with LLMNR. And while I am going to show you this tool, while it still has a place in your toolbox, it does have a couple of problems. So let's go ahead and take a minute and look at NBT Stat. Now, before we dive into this, I want to make sure you understand what I have here. So this is a Windows desktop system. The desktop's underneath my table here. And I've also drug in, you can just barely see, but I've got this little laptop here too. So I've got these two systems running modern versions of Windows. They're plugged into the same switch underneath my table, and I've got a little home router that's really doing nothing more than acting as a DHCP server. So with that setup in mind, let's go ahead and go over to my desktop and let me show you how NBT Stat works. Now, I've got a command prompt open because NBT Stat is a command, but what I first want to do is have you look over here on the right. This is my little network. This is the computer I'm on right now called Studio. Student PC is the little laptop right next to me, and we're plugged into this little home router. We have no internet connection. We don't need it for this one particular example. Oh, and by the way, I'm running on the workgroup called Workgroup. So to run NBT Stat, just type in NBT STAT. Now, if you type it by itself, all you're going to get is a help screen. Now, I need to warn you right now, NBT Stat is long in the tooth. There's a lot of commands in here that simply don't work anymore. So I'm not going to be covering them here. We don't even really need them anymore. However, there are a number of really great tools and a lot of switches we are going to use. So let's go ahead and dive into the ones that I know work well. Now, you've got to keep in mind that every Windows system has what it calls its registered names. These are the names that it has sent out to the world and said, this is who I am. Nobody came back and said, oh, that's my name too or anything. So the names are registered. So you want to make sure that your system knows who he is, and the best way to do that is through NBT Stat using the -n switch. So when I type NBT Stat -n like this, you'll see a lot of stuff comes out. Now, what's interesting here is basically this is telling everybody who his workgroup is, what his name is, and some of his functionality. So, for example, on this first line, it says, you'll see the 00, that means I am a member of workgroup called Workgroup. The computer name is called Studio, but you'll see it's listed twice. One of these is to say he's a workstation. He can read other people's shared folders. And the other value means he's a server, which means he can actually share folders up on the network. These last three values are used by the browser managers. When you have a Windows network, one system has to have the main list. And you can actually tell who the browser manager is because it has this listing right here. You see where it says MS Browse? That means in my little two-computer network, this guy right here is the browser manager. Now, that tells me all about him, but how does he know about other computers on the network? Well, he has a cache built into him. So to see that cache, we type nbtstat-c, and right now you'll see there's no names in the cache. That's okay because we don't keep these caches very long. And after a very short amount of time, 1 minute, 2 minutes, I don't remember exactly what it is, the caches are dumped and we'll have to do a rebroadcast to get computer names. So I got to do something on this network to get my computer to talk to that student PC. So I'm just going to do something like netview. All right, now he sees it. And let's go ahead and ping him while we're at it. So I'm going to ping, what is this? Student, S-T-U-D-E-N-T -PC. So we get a little ping. I'm just trying to get some traffic moving here. And now I can rerun nbtstat-c, and you'll see I have a listing for the other computer. So that just gives you an idea of the two tools we can use. These are the two biggest tools you can use with nbtstat. Running the -n and making sure the names that you think this computer actually are showing up in the listing, and also making sure that some type of transaction goes on with another machine to make sure it works. So in this case, everything worked beautifully. Where these become more useful is when they make an error. Then we know to start looking for, do I have a firewall in here? Do I have a discovery protocol not turned on? Did I forget to turn on IPv4 and I'm just using IPv6? There's a lot of things that can happen. And remember, nbtstat's job is to simply let you know there's a problem. You're going to have to dig for yourself to find it. Now, we could do a few more interesting things that can be very handy. For example, I can take the nbtstat command. Now, in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go talk to that other machine. So here I'm going to say, go to another computer with the -a switch. And now what you're looking at is the actual registered information, not for my computer, but for this guy over here. So this should look fairly similar. Notice that we don't have that MS Browse at the bottom. That's because this little laptop is not the browser manager. The other guy is. But it does show that this system is on the work group. We see it's named twice, once with double zeros to let us know that it's a workstation, and once with a 20 to let it know it's a server. So for example, if we were trying to get to a shared folder on this guy and it wasn't showing up with that 20, we would know that there's a problem on this system where he thinks he's not sharing stuff. So there could be a problem like, for example, the server service is a service. So you actually have to make sure it's turned on or off. All right, so that can be pretty handy. Now, I want to start showing you some of the problems that we run into with nbtstat that can drive people batty. One of them is a statistical function called -r. And basically, this is just statistics in terms of what it's been doing lately. Now, if you take a look here, you'll see the word student PC in here a lot because, well, I've been talking to him for a while. But you're also going to see a lot of gobbledygook, literally ASCII gibberish in here. NetBIOS was originally designed to have a maximum of 15 character names, all uppercase, no spaces, no special characters. It had a lot of rules. So today's Windows systems, especially ones using LLMNR and such, they don't really worry about that anymore. It's not a problem. However, they'll still try to update that same table, and poor nbtstat's never been updated, and he can't read them. So this is just an example of a great tool that's getting a little bit old. Also, if you take a look on this nbtstat -r, you'll see all these resolved by broadcast, which is what we should see, but then you see resolved by name server. In this case, it's 0. Now you'd say, well, okay, name server, maybe they mean DNS. They don't. They're actually talking about an ancient naming service called WINS, which I'm not even going to get into anymore. So we should only see things resolved and registered by broadcast and never, ever, ever by server. Okay, now there is one more thing we can actually do, probably the only fix tool that we have built into nbtstat. Basically, we can do either, number one, take all your registered information and just rebroadcast it, let everybody know who you are again because we've got a problem. The other thing you can do is clear the cache. And you do that through the nbtstat commands. These are uppercase R's. So we can do nbtstat space -R, and that is going to clear your remote cache table. And then we can do an nbtstat -RR, and that is all of your registered information has been rebroadcast and reestablished out to the world. So I guess I will have to back up a little bit and say nbtstat can be used in some cases using the -R or the -RR to at least make a quick chance that maybe there's a little problem that needs a little bit of fixing. Also keep in mind that nbtstat really is a net bias tool. It doesn't really work that well with LLMNR, but you'll be surprised how often you can find yourself turning to it to make those quick little fixes when you can't find another computer out on your network.